Season 3 of Netflix hit show Never Have I Ever just premiered, and I am proud enough to say that I binged the entire season before Netflix even had the chance to send me the reminder notification about it. So far, the people that have binged Season 3 along with me have had pretty mixed reviews on it, but one common theme that's agreed upon is the evolution of Devi's character. There's a lot of changes of Devi's behavior from Season 1 to Season 3. In Season 1, Devi can definitely be seen as an unlikable female protagonist, as she does and says a lot of things that is not okay for anyone to. And in Season 2, the cringe fest that is Devi didn't get too much better. So how exactly were they able to write her as a much more mature person in Season 3? That's honestly something I really wanted to dive into. Is the Season 3 maturity of Devi something that's actually believable and attainable for her character? So let's find out by taking a deeper look at the evolution of Devi Vishwakumar, aka Crazy Devi. To find out why Devi was given the nickname Crazy Devi in the first place, you would have to start at the origin of most of her issues. In the first season, it gets pretty heavy pretty quickly as we learn Devi is dealing with the death of her father. Her father died of a heart attack during her school recital while she was literally on stage performing. Her father was the one person that she felt connected to, as her and her mother often butt heads, and she never quite felt like she was a daughter that her mom wanted. The events of his death caused a pretty severe trauma response, which ended up resulting in the loss of the use of her legs temporarily, taking an already unpopular Devi to a new level of unpopularity once the use of her legs miraculously came back, which by the way happened when she was on a random outing with her mom and spotted the school hottie Paxton Hall-Yoshida. Somehow, Devi wanting to get a look at Paxton's hotness was enough to get her out of her chair, thus leaving this occurrence completely unexplainable and leading people to think that she was making up the whole thing to begin with. To make her own self-image issues worse, her cousin Kamala is staying with her, and Kamala is as close to perfect as you can get. Devi sees that things seemingly come easy to Kamala due to her beauty and what she perceives as perfection. Wanting so badly to have some form of normalcy, Devi sets her sights on getting a boyfriend. But after discussing it with her therapist, Dr. Jamie, who's played by the iconic Niecy Nash, they come to the conclusion that she's still processing a lot, so being someone's girlfriend in that fragile time just really isn't the best idea. One thing we learn pretty quickly about Devi is given the choice between a good idea and a bad one, she's gonna go with the bad one. Completely creating her own loophole to the situation, she thinks that losing her virginity to Paxton will help her gain some cool points. It's pretty clear early on that Devi's dire need for male attention is connected to the death of her father being the one and only person in her life that she felt understood her and made her feel less alone. So she thinks if she can get the most popular guy in school to be interested in her, then that'll miraculously fill the void that she's been feeling since her father passed away. Surprisingly for Devi, her plan was going pretty well as she got Paxton to agree to the hookup. But from there, things don't go exactly as planned. She ends up going to his house and going off to his bathroom where she unexpectedly runs into his sister. Paxton is extra protective of his sister since she has Down syndrome. He finds this a huge breach of privacy and tells her that it isn't going to work out and asks her to leave. I feel like they added this layer to Paxton because he is otherwise a dull character in the first season. He doesn't seem to quite have a personality trait, and I think that they thought having a special needs sibling would deepen him, and somehow, to me, it doesn't. Maybe it's because while he doesn't want anyone to be mean to his sister, he often has his mean moments towards Devi, especially because she's in a lower totem pole socially than he is. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so I'll explain more about that later. Even though the hookup doesn't happen, Devi still tells her friends that it does, which is hypocritical since Devi chewed out Elanor for keeping her boyfriend a secret pretty much right before this. Here's a little side note about her friends. Elanor is an over-the-top drama queen, and I mean that quite literally. She's super invested in being an actress, while Fabiola, on the other hand, is a robotics girl who is probably the least self-involved person in their friend group, and thus why the reason we stan her. My only wish for her character is that they wouldn't dress her like a middle-aged man who lives in his mother's basement. But anyways, back to the Paxton and the Devi of it all. At first, Paxton won't even talk to her at school, which results in Devi being on edge and taking out her anger on her nemesis Ben. Ben Gross is also an academic scholar like Devi, which has fueled a rivalry between them. Ben plays a part in Devi's insecurity as he nicknamed her and her friends the UN, which he says stands for the uneffable nerds. So when Ben clowns Devi for missing a question that has to do with the Holocaust, she backfires by saying she wishes something that happened during the Holocaust happened to Ben. I can't say the specifics because of YouTube, but I'm pretty sure you can put it together. This is extra bad given the fact that Ben is Jewish. So yeah, nothing Devi is going through could ever justify saying such a horrible thing to someone. This is far from the only time that her anger gets the best of her in the series though. After Devi apologizes to Ben, he is quick to accept, probably more so than anyone else would have been, given the fact that she had a breakdown in the middle of apologizing. She states how she's a horrible person and how she wishes to no longer be here. This leads Ben to understand that something more serious is happening in her life, and they have a sweet moment, but it only lasts for about a moment, as after the understanding, they quickly go back to their normal dynamic. Paxton and Devi also make up after he talks to his sister and realizes Devi meant no harm. Soon after that, Devi attends a party where she gets pretty drunk because she sees Paxton talking to another girl. A very drunk Devi sees a coyote that she believes to be her father reincarnated. This isn't the first time she sees her dad in a flashback or some kind of memory, or even in the form of a coyote. But it's obvious the more in denial Devi is about her grief, the more severe and more frequent the sightings of her father become. So of course the coyote isn't her father reincarnated, and it ends up attacking her, and Devi's just laying there pretty sadly while everybody's just staring at her. But here comes Paxton to the rescue. He picks her up and takes her to the hospital. Of course, Devi's more focused on the fact that she gets one-on-one time with Paxton than the injury she just sustained. She gets even more excited when Paxton takes a selfie of them and posts it on his permanent page. That moment honestly flashed me back to high school and reminded me of how much of the bare minimum I used to accept. Like, him treating her like a human being should not be a celebratory moment, but I get it, when you're young, it just seems like so much more of a big deal. Their cute moment ends abruptly when her mom comes in and she's rightfully angry, especially because Devi told her she was going to be studying. But we'll talk more about her relationship with Paxton and her mom in a few. As previously stated, Ben coined Devi, Fabiola, and Elanor the UN. So in an attempt to help stand up for her, Elanor tells Ben that Devi is hooking up with Paxton. So when Devi puts herself on the UN school trip last minute, it annoys Ben. Because apparently back in 6th grade, they had a pact that they wouldn't cross paths with their extracurriculars. I don't know, it's pretty dumb. But Ben goes on to say he doesn't care if she's hooking up with Paxton, she'll never be cool to him. Unknowingly to the both of them, someone hears this and the rumor spreads like wildfire. Devi plays the rumor up and acts super cool and is even giving some of the girls advice on how to become cooler. While everything is going good, and with a little help of alcohol, Devi and Ben form an alliance for the mock UN to help both their grades. Then the next morning, Devi wakes up to a really pissed off text from Paxton because he's heard the rumor that she's been lying about them hooking up. But remember, this is crazy Devi who takes no responsibility for her actions, as she completely blames everything on Ben. She takes zero responsibility for starting the lie in the first place, and at no point correcting it. She thinks the best way to get back at Ben is to break the alliance at the mock UN trial and not tell him about it. A completely unprepared and blindsided Ben falls for it and is completely crushed. So far, Devi is completely living up to her nickname, given the fact that she always lets her anger get the best of her. She never realizes her own faults in situations that she's created, and her attitude only gets worse from there. After Paxton doesn't accept her apology, she takes it out on Elanor and Fab, which Fab is trying to tell her some pretty big news that she has just come out as gay, but Devi completely blows her off without listening and says she has bigger issues. I really could not with her audacity right here. Like, sis, you started all of these issues yourself and you can't even be a good friend to Fab, who is the most loyal. Insane. After realizing Paxton never outed her as a liar to the school, she then tries to win her friends back by having a sleepover. There she finds out about Eleanor's issues with her estranged mother, who has come back into town but didn't reach out to her. It turns out that Eleanor's love for acting stems from wanting to be like her estranged mother. Her mom previously claimed to be a performer on a cruise ship. So when Eleanor found out she was back in town and didn't even have the courtesy to let her know, it definitely stung, to say the least. Devi completely steps over a boundary and invites Eleanor's mom to come to visit her at school. She is completely overcompensating for being a bad friend prior. And at first it doesn't go well, but then Eleanor starts to connect with her mom. Her mom has zero practice with children, so she just comes off as a cool mom, and the girls start to confide in her their deepest secrets. But then she ends up blurting out the secrets to Devi and Fabiola's moms. Devi's mom has the much bigger reaction to the fact that Devi claimed to have had sex. This pushes Devi into a corner, and she's forced to own up to her lies. Her friends are rightfully pissed that she lied and are just overall annoyed with her behavior. So after she apologized and they accept, she promises to be a better friend. One good thing did come from the encounter, as Fab got to tell her mom she's gay, and it went wonderfully. I absolutely love this moment, and parents should definitely take notes because this is exactly how you should handle that kind of news. Devi's promise is quickly put to the test after Eleanor's mom abandoned her again, solely based off of jealousy. She saw that Eleanor has so much more talent than she will ever have and got fake inspired and decided to go for her dreams one more time. Of course, Eleanor is really devastated. She literally just leaves a note, doesn't even tell her daughter in person. Her mom is literally such a deadbeat, I can't. So Eleanor is rightfully spiraling, and Fabiola tells Devi what happens, stating how much they need to be there for her right now. But just as that happens, Devi receives a text from Paxton stating that it's an emergency. Paxton pretty much guilt trips her into going, saying that she owes him one since he didn't say anything about her lying. So Devi is trying to be there for both Paxton and Eleanor. She thinks that if she hurries up and goes and helps Paxton with his issue, she'll be able to come back and help Eleanor with hers. It turns out Paxton's emergency is actually an emergency for his sister, who is in fashion school, and one of the models dropped out, so they need Devi to try on the clothes and take pictures. At first, Devi is a little pissed off because she left Eleanor's really big issue, but Paxton states like this is really important to his sister, so she stays. But then Devi gets sidetracked and completely forgets about Eleanor. Her friends then find her at Paxton's house, stating that they need a friend break. And they're completely justified in this. That's a huge thing for Devi to just kind of blow off and quote unquote forget about. And honestly, from there, it seems like nothing could get worse with her and her friends, but it does at Ben's birthday party. So quick update on her relationship with Ben. They bonded a lot more when she learned about Ben's tough home life of having a father that worked too hard and couldn't notice him, and a mom who just didn't bother to put him first. So much so that they let him have a 16th birthday party with no parental supervision. So he throws in a huge rager. So at the party, Paxton's friend Trent decides to do something gross to the punch. And when Devi sees that Fab is about to take a drink of the contaminated punch, she tries to stop her and she tries to smack it out of her hand really dramatically, and it spills all over Fabiola. And Fabiola, of course, is really upset about this, and they get into a huge fight. Fab thinks this is just another dramatic moment from Devi, and she doesn't even want to hear her reasoning out at this point. She's just over it. Fabiola stated how she wanted one night not to deal with Devi's drama, and Devi responded back by saying she sorry her dad's death was such an inconvenience, which to me is a hell of a thing to say given the fact that she barely was there for Eleanor when her mom abandoned her, being the big reason for their fallout. But Devi being completely wrapped up in herself and herself only is a reoccurring theme here. Fab made it clear that even though Devi is going through something awful, it doesn't excuse her behavior. And I completely agree, and this is something that needs to be driven home more. Other people's issues aren't lesser just because you have something going on, especially given the fact that her friends have been there for her countless times and she keeps falling short on her end of the friendship. So of course this big argument ends really embarrassingly for Devi. She ends up in a pool, and of course she's sad again, and guess who's there to save her? Paxton Hall-Yoshida, aka Captain Save-A-Ho, because how many times is he gonna have to save this girl? So anyways, Paxton gives her his clothes and takes her home. For some reason, he takes Devi's breakdown moment as a time to kiss her, which, can I say, we need to stop doing this in TV shows and movies. It just shows a guy who has no emotional intelligence. When you're reacting this way to someone's obvious, devastating moment, it's such a bizarre behavior to me. So hopefully Hollywood gets this message and starts making emotional awareness in men the bare minimum that they're showing. But of course, Devi is pleased with this behavior. She convinces herself that now that she's gotten a kiss from Paxton, that's all she really needs in her life. Then, as soon as she decides this, she walks into her front door and sees her dad at her fridge. But it turns out not to be her dad, of course, but actually her uncle coming to visit. Remember Kamala, her perfect cousin who seemingly could do no wrong? Well, Devi just found out that she isn't perfect, as she's pending a fiance and has been hooking up with someone she met at school. Which of course Devi took this information and blackmailed her cousin into letting her sneak out to Ben's party in the first place. We can add blackmail to Devi's long list of faults. Kamala is supposed to meet her fiance the next day for the first time, and her uncle is there to make sure things go smoothly, but we'll come back to that later. Even though Devi gets flashes of seeing her dad while she tries to focus on the memory of the kiss, she is still in denial about how much her dad's death is affecting her, and the more she pushes it down, the more of a wild card Devi's emotions continue to be. So it's the next day and Kamala's fiance is on his way to the house, and as soon as he gets there, Kamala notices her boyfriend that she's not even supposed to have is sneaking his way into the house. Kamala is trying to get him out the best way that she can. She's letting him know that he's going to ruin everything, and Nalini finds out about Kamala's boyfriend in that moment and helps her sneak out the boyfriend. Devi decides to play it as a distraction, and she plays the very instrument, the harp, that she hasn't played since her father's death. Quickly after that, Devi's mom finds out she snuck out to a party and changed her clothes in a boy's car thanks to Paxton coming over to return the outfit she left. Again, not being able to read social cues, Paxton makes it worse by revealing they kissed. A frustrated Nalini insults Paxton by calling him an idiot boy, and Devi tries to defend him, only making the situation worse between her and her mom. Devi blurs out that Kamala can do no wrong in her eyes, as she just helped her boyfriend escape from the house unseen by the uncle and fiance. That of course seemingly causes an issue mistakenly for her cousin Kamala. Luckily for Kamala's perfect ass though, her fiance is pretty progressive and is okay with the whole thing. During an already heated argument, Devi then finds out from her uncle visiting that her mom plans on taking her back to India permanently. Her mom expresses she needs help raising Devi, as all Devi does is defy her, and we flash back to a memory of her mom saying something horrible out of frustration the night her father died, stating that Devi is too difficult and isn't her daughter. We find out just how deep her wounds with her mom goes in that moment, as she states that she knows she isn't the daughter her mom wants, and she wishes her mom had died that night instead of her dad. This fight is so bad that she doesn't want to go home, and because she's not close with her friends right now, Ben really is the only person she can lean on. Now, I definitely understand those are horrible words for any daughter to hear their mother say, but I will say that Devi has never really tried to comply with her mother's rules. She has constantly defied her at every turn. I completely get that she's a teenager and has a lot of growing to do, but completely blaming her strained relationship with her mom solely on her mom and not taking accountability for her actions, all while saying those horrible words to her mom, is something that should have been a wake-up call once she had a moment to cool off. We then see Paxton being pissed off and blowing Devi off for what her mom said about him, even though she apologized on her behalf. Paxton's reasoning for being angry with Devi is very thin to me, given the fact that she defended him in his presence. She saw that she tried to talk her mom down and tell her not to talk about him like that. I feel like his insecurities about himself are just really coming out here. But moving past Paxton, we then see the deep grief and struggle that Nellany has been going through internally and dealing with the struggle of raising Devi alone. She then decides to spread Mohan's ashes on his birthday. She thinks that this is the best way to honor her late husband. Devi continues to lash out at her mom when she reaches out by coming to Ben's house. Her mom tells her the time that she plans on spreading the ashes, but Devi is still reluctant to go. Devi then tells Ben her plan to get emancipated, and Sweet Ben reaches out to Devi's friends to help convince her to go spread the ashes with her mom. Meanwhile, Paxton's sister calls him out yet again. Did I mention that Stephanie's like the best character? Her one-liners alone deserve their own spin-off show. Well, that gets Paxton to think on what he wants. Devi's friends decide to go help her make the right decision. While doing so, Devi helps out Elanor in the process by telling her she should want to be herself again. Since her mom left, she couldn't handle her acting ties to her mother, and she just really was denying herself of what she wanted. Her friends see this as Devi reflecting, which I think she was, but I also think it shows that she's finally putting her friends' issues before her own drama. Devi also owns up to her crap in their friendship and decides to go spread her dad's ashes. Ben rushes to help her get there, which is super sweet since he drives like an old lady and only has his permit. This then leads to a beautiful moment between Devi and her mom. They finally state how much they mean to each other, and probably the most emotional moment of the series so far. This also leads to a moment of realization between Ben and Devi about their feelings, which leads to a passionate kiss. While that's happening though, Devi is in the middle of getting a call from Paxton, but she's busy kissing Ben, and it leads us to the next season of Never Have I Ever, where Devi will have to make the mature decision of picking between two guys. What could possibly go wrong with that? Season 2 automatically comes in hot, where we pick up exactly where we left off with Ben and Devi kissing, and naturally her mom catches her and rips her a new one. But quick thinking Devi uses the emotions of spreading her dad's ashes as an excuse. Anyone with strict parents can definitely relate to this. You kind of have to be quick on your feet if you're going to defy your parents. Devi is still on a high from her kiss with Ben, but before she even has time to process it, she sees that Paxton is at her house, who happens to have been there since he left the voicemail. Which would be creepy if it wasn't frickin' Paxton Hall-Yoshida, the boy that she had been dreaming about for years. For some reason, Paxton seems really nervous, but he ends up apologizing for how he treated her before, and out of nowhere asks her if she wants to have dinner at his house. Devi is of course super ecstatic. She just kissed Ben and now she has a date with Paxton. As a girl who was struggling to get one date in season 1, she is doing a hell of a job in season 2. So Devi goes up to her room and sees the voicemail from Paxton, but then she notices something even more important, an old voicemail from her dad. She plays it and it brings her a level of comfort that she hasn't had in a while. Devi is having trouble figuring out who she wants to be with, so she calls in her friends for reinforcements. They decided to make a pros and cons list. For Paxton, there really isn't much on there besides his hotness, but that's enough for Devi to feel like she should pick him. Her friends tell her that there'll be a million Bens in college, but only one Paxton Hall-Yoshida now. Which is kind of messed up, but they're in high school, so I get it. So Devi has every intention on letting Ben know that she's picking Paxton, but then Ben tells her that he broke up with his girlfriend so they could be together. I didn't mention her in season 1, but Shara was Ben's girlfriend. She was very vapid and just very clearly using him because Ben's parents have money. She didn't care for him at all, and it showed, and Ben kind of didn't really care about her either. They were just dating each other just to say that they were dating each other. So to me, this wasn't a huge sacrifice, but for Devi, it kind of seemed like it since Ben was willing to get rid of a relationship for her. But again, it's not like he really cared about her or vice versa. But either way, she feels like she can't tell Ben about Paxton. Ben wants to make things official, but Devi doesn't give him an answer just yet. She wants to go on her date with Paxton first and see how that goes. And let me just say, it doesn't go very well because a date to Paxton somehow includes his buddies. He says that's how he normally does his dates, but Devi doesn't really feel like he's being that serious. So in turn, she ends up picking Ben. But of course, right after she picks Ben, she speaks to Paxton and he makes it very clear that he's serious about her and he wants to spend all the time with him that he can before she goes off to India. So now she has 2 boys that want to make it official with her, and she's back to having to choose. Or does she? Devi makes the not at all mature decision of dating both of the guys until she goes to India, and she figures if it all blows up, she'll be gone before she has to deal with the backlash anyway. Her friends and her therapist, Dr. Ryan, both tell her that it's a horrible idea and she's going to end up hurting them if they find out. But Fabiola did some research and she realized no one pays attention to Devi because she's that much of a loser, so nothing should go wrong, right? Everything was going good until they decide to throw Devi a going away party. Initially, Devi decides to invite Paxton and Paxton only, but Ben overhears and he wants to go to the party as well. So now her plan is to keep them away from each other. And with the help of Fabiola and Elanor, she seems to be doing a good job at it. That is until a girl says that she's dating Paxton. Devi just couldn't help herself and she ends up blowing up her own spot when Ben overhears her. I fully don't understand how big of an ego you have to be dating 2 guys and still be worried about what some random girl has to say. Especially when the 2 guys are in the same vicinity and don't know anything about each other. You'd think that Devi would want to be as low-key as possible instead of spreading that rumor, but it's crazy Devi and she has no rational thoughts. Ben is rightfully furious and immediately tells Paxton what's going on. Paxton is obviously hurt as well as Ben, but Paxton's emotion is more of slight disgust and anger that Devi would have the audacity to cheat on him. He even goes as far as to say that she could never hurt him. Yeah, we know what you mean by that, Paxton. Devi runs after Paxton, which causes him to stop in the middle of the street and yell at her, and then he gets hit by a freaking car. And that's how Paxton Hall-Yoshida died. I'm just kidding. He ended up being completely fine. He did end up needing a cast though. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but Paxton is a swimmer, so yeah, he's definitely gonna need that arm. At this point, Devi is ready to run to India. She doesn't want to go to school and have to deal with the fallout of what happened. But unfortunately for her, her mom just came back from her trip and decided that she doesn't want to go to India after all. After coming back from her trip from India, she realized that everybody she thought she could lean on has a lot going on, but she did end up bringing back Mohan's mother to stay with them. Devi returns to school and feels awful for getting Paxton hurt, and to make things worse, it looks like his swimming career is over because of the crash. Paxton realizes he still wants to go to college, but unfortunately without his swimming talents, he'll really need to bring his grades up. So the principal gets him a tutor, and he's really upset when he finds out that it's Devi. But he quickly has a plan to have Devi do all of his schoolwork since she's the cause of the crash to begin with. Devi agrees since she feels really guilty, but Paxton quickly just gets worse with his attitude towards her, and of course his voice of reason's sister calls him out again, but this time it's not entirely enough to get him to change his ways. But his parents not even expecting him to try to get into college is. So he decides to actually let Devi help him study and they become okay again. So now that things are good with Paxton, Devi tries to fix things with Ben, but it's not as easy. Then to make matters worse, there's a new Indian girl in school named Annessa, who makes Devi feel inferior since everyone likes her with little to no effort at all. Annessa tries to befriend Devi, but Devi is standoffish for absolutely no reason at all. She's annoyed that people think they should automatically be friends just because they're both Indian, which she does have a point about, but she also doesn't have a valid reason not to be friends with her. So when she lets it slip to her mom that there's another Indian girl in school, she insists she has her over the house. Annessa greets Devi's mom and grandma with the utmost respect, and Devi gets even more annoyed that they like her so easily. Elanor is also at the sleepover, and when Elanor asks Annessa for advice on the new guy Malcolm that she likes, Devi tries to look cool by suggesting they sneak out so she can meet him. They go out and Malcolm happens to be friends with Ben, and it's awkward at first since it's clear Ben is still really mad at Devi, but when they end up at a tattoo parlor, Ben starts to have his normal dynamic with Devi, and he bets her that she won't get a piercing like she claims she wants to because of her mom, so he says if she gets a piercing, he will get a tattoo. And this is a big deal because Ben wants to get buried in a Jewish cemetery, and you definitely can't do that if you have one. So they both seemingly go through it, except Ben's tattoo is completely fake. He wanted Devi to know what it felt like to be lied to and says that they're nowhere near okay. He references the party when the cheating scandal blew up and she decided to run after Paxton, leaving him there like his feelings didn't matter at all. Ben does have a point here. I mean, he also cheated on his girlfriend technically, so he shouldn't be as mad as he was. But his relationship with Sierra was surface level, while he was there for Devi through some of the toughest points in her life. So his feelings are definitely valid. But at the same time, they were dating for 2 weeks, so I think he's taking it a little too far. Devi is so thrown by what happened with Ben that she completely forgets to take her nose ring out before her mom sees it. And her mom wakes up before she does, comes in her room and yells at her about it. But Annessa totally saves her ass by giving some speech that Devi wanted to be more connected to her culture. And it actually works. Just when Devi is starting to like Annessa, she notices that Ben and Annessa are flirting. For whatever reason, Devi still has feelings for Ben. I feel like it's because Paxton made one comment saying that they didn't make any sense together, and from then on, she kind of set her sights on Ben. The way they set up this storyline is probably the part in season 2 that made the least sense to me. You would think that she would fall more for Paxton again, given the fact that their interactions were actually a lot better than hers and Ben's for a while. But for whatever reason, she's all about Ben again, and she's getting mad at Annessa for no reason, given the fact that she has no idea that Devi and Ben have any sort of history. So again, Devi's lack of communication and creating issues in her own head make this issue so much bigger than it needs to be. Since Devi had planned on moving to India, she started to skip gym class because apparently the credits wouldn't transfer over, and because of that, now she was in danger of failing. But her school has this really creative extra credit where they do a 24-hour relay race, and she gets her friends to join, which include Ben and Annessa. I should note that it was Annessa's idea to invite Ben, and Dr. Ryan told Devi if she ever feels stressed to listen to something that soothes her, so she picks her dad's voicemail. And this immediately calms Devi down from the rage that she was just feeling. So Paxton tells Devi that this trip is basically like hookup central, and if he didn't have to study all weekend that he would totally be going. Devi previously agreed to helping Paxton study, but since she needs the extra credit, she tells him she's unavailable. Immediately, Devi sees Ben and Annessa flirting, and it already starts to annoy her, so she has a plan brewing that she's gonna try to keep them apart as much as possible so they don't go to the hookup tent. Ben, for whatever reason, starts talking to Devi again, which makes it even worse for her seeing Ben and Annessa together. Devi's brilliant plan is to constantly have Ben and Annessa doing the relay race, so that way they can't spend a bunch of time talking and flirting together. So Devi's plan works for a little while, and Ben and Annessa are clearly getting worn out because they're running every 2 seconds. But when it's Devi's turn to go run, they sneak off and go into the hookup tent. This infuriates Devi, and she runs off trying to find her voicemail, but she's unable to find it, which leads her to a big freak out. When somebody mistakes her for Annessa, she freaks out and says that they should be able to tell her and Annessa apart because she's not freaking Anno. And yes, it's that Anno that you're thinking of, the ED. So Shara and her friend overhears this, and they end up spreading a rumor. So it's the next day, and she sees Annessa crying, and it turns out that that rumor is actually true, and that's why Annessa ended up leaving her previous school. So Devi feels really bad, but not bad enough to own up to it. She even goes as far as lying to the principal and telling her and Annessa that she'll find the person that started the rumor to begin with so they can be punished. And when it ends up falling on Shara and her friend and they get in trouble, Devi still doesn't feel bad enough to open up and say it was actually her. But when Annessa keeps going on about what a good friend she is and goes into her struggles about her ED, Devi then breaks and says that she was the one who started the rumor. Annessa, Fabiola, and Elanor are rightfully upset and pissed at her, and Annessa ends up telling the principal what happened. Devi ends up getting suspended, which is worse than what Shara would have gotten since she lied to the principal's face. Her mom now has to pick her up, and of course her mom is extremely disappointed to the point where she doesn't even have words for Devi. And the first thing that Devi does when she sees Annessa is ask her to talk to the principal so she doesn't get in trouble. She claims she feels bad, but if you really felt bad, you wouldn't be asking the person that you wronged to help you out. Annessa rightfully rips her a new one, and Devi says the reason why she got so pissed off is because she knew that Annessa and Ben had hooked up. Annessa sets her straight and says it's very obvious that her and Ben have a history and they never hooked up, they were just trying to run away from her craziness. And she straight up calls her Crazy Devi. And it wasn't enough that she got into an argument with Annessa, she then snaps at Paxton, who's coming to her for help once again since she has pretty much kind of blown him off the last few days. She says she can't hold his hand forever and he needs to be a good student on his own. Ben comes to Devi's house and lets her know that Annessa plans on changing schools again because the rumors are just too much, and he tells her that she needs to fix it. So Devi gets a brilliant plan to apologize to Annessa, thinking that this will lead to Ben forgiving her and wanting to be with her. But her therapist makes it very clear that she needs to do things solely because it's the right thing to do and not to get something from it. After one gigantic failed apology, Devi gets caught being in school and her favorite teacher calls her cousin to pick her up. Now, side story about Kamala, it's not going so well with her fiance. She feels like he doesn't really understand her. And here we see like this really cute moment between Mr. K and Kamala. This of course comes into play later. But after the second and much better apology from Devi, Annessa has finally accepted her apology. But now they have to figure out how to try to get her to stay at the school because her mom wants her to move. Devi's mom is trying to be a better mom, so she helps Devi out and talks to Annessa's mom for her, which brings them much closer and gets Annessa to stay at the school. But now that Annessa is staying, Ben definitely wants to ask her out, which initially makes Devi a little upset, but after everything she did to Annessa, she kind of just has to swallow it and accept that they're a couple now. Also, Annessa did ask her if it was okay, which I feel like she kind of knows it's not, given the fact that Devi freaked out so bad that she started a rumor about her, but she takes her okay and goes and dates Ben. Devi now has to fix things with Paxton after she blew up on him for absolutely no reason, but he said he's taking her advice and trying to do things on his own. She pushes him to go the extra mile, and Paxton ends up doing this extra credit and bringing in his grandpa to tell a story. It's really cute, and you get a little bit more about his heritage. Devi is forced to work with Ben and Annessa on a group project, and at first it's complete torture. But when she got advice from Mr. K and said to focus on the things that are annoying about Ben, it helps her and she's starting to slowly accept that they're just going to be friends. Annessa completely blows her portion of the group project, and you can tell that it's a turn off for Ben, but because they just started dating, he doesn't want to say anything about it. Now let's catch up with Fabiola and Elanor for a second. So Fabiola, as we know, is out as gay and she has a girlfriend, Eve, and things are going really well. They decided they wanted to be the first cricket queens and not, king and queen, make the history as the first LGBT couple. And in order to do that, Fabiola has kind of been changing her entire aesthetic so she can be more popular. Meanwhile, Elanor has been dating the Malcolm kid that nobody likes, and he's extremely rude to her. He belittles her and is kind of controlling. He's just being a complete dick. So when Devi and Fabiola try to tell Elanor about the situation, she flips out on them and ends up saying pretty horrific things. Elanor ends up calling Fabiola an Eve clone, and y'all know how I feel about Fabiola. I hate when people come for her. But she gives it so much worse to Devi, saying her social life is a toilet fire and she knows nothing about real relationships, which ends up, of course, making Devi really upset. So Devi is walking down the street and she's crying, and who of course pulls up? It's Captain Save-A-Ho Paxton. He ends up taking Devi home, but Devi notices something when she pulls up like a block away from her house. Her mom is also parked talking to a guy. The wonderful advice that Melanie got was from Dr. Jackson, played by Common, and they start having a little bit of a thing. Of course, she doesn't want anybody in the house to know about it, so she's been like sneaking around and lying. So when Devi sees her talking to this guy the next time she goes out, she decides to follow her, and she ends up roping Kamala into her mess, and they end up on the top of the roof of Dr. Jackson's house. And when Devi drops her phone, she tries to go into the hot tub and get it, and she makes so much noise that her mom and Dr. Jackson come out. Her phone ends up being submerged and she loses the voicemail from her dad, and she just has a huge freak out, saying how could her mom do this so quickly after her father's death. And her mom straight up lies to her and says that she's not on a date, that they're just friends. Devi feels horrible about this, but her mom ends up calling her actions completely crazy. This is kind of a breaking point for Devi as she talks to her therapist, and we see her breaking down, saying she's not sure what's wrong with her and everybody around her feels like she's crazy. Her therapist is really a pivotal part of this show because she grounds her and lets her know that she's not crazy, she's just a young girl that's going through a lot. Devi realizes she messed up big, so she ends up going to Dr. Jackson's office to try to apologize. But then she overhears that her mom was lying and she hears her breaking it off with him. Devi is furious and she won't talk to her mom, but her grandma literally slaps her into reality with like the lightest slap I've ever heard. It's so cute. Her grandma ends up putting her in her place, stating that her mom is able to do what she wants, she's an adult, and Devi is a child who she doesn't have to answer to. Which in one way she's correct, but the other, your mom really shouldn't be lying to your face. But we know like old school parenting, they definitely say do as I say and not as I do. Her grandma encourages them to start speaking to each other again, stating the last conversation she had with Mohan, her son, was not a good one, so she doesn't want to leave things bad with her mom because you just never know in life. This leads to another amazing moment between Nalini and Devi. They get to watch home videos of Mohan together and it really brings them together. So Paxton likes Devi again, I think because she brought out a different side to him that he didn't know he had. And he's been sneaking into her window and they've been making out, but Devi wants more and she asks him to go to the dance. Paxton straight up says no in front of everybody and it's really embarrassing for her. And Devi gets consoled by Ben, who says that Paxton doesn't deserve her and she deserves a lot better than that. So Devi does a really mature thing and tells Paxton that she can't do a halfway relationship. Either they're together or they're not. And Paxton said because he's been embarrassed by her that he really can't do the public thing. Devi had a dream of her dad saying that she deserves better than what Paxton is giving her. That combined with what Ben said just pretty much made her realize that she really does deserve better, and she ends up walking away from Paxton, which is really mature given the fact that she was willing to take crumbs from him first season and just like hook up with no strings attached. Elanor, Fabiola, and Devi all make up. Malcolm ends up breaking up with Elanor and she realized by talking to her stepmom that she's been basically dating someone like her mom when she needs someone stable like her dad who's always been there for her. It's definitely a growing moment for Elanor. Paxton gets a call from the school guidance counselor saying what a good team Devi and him made. And I don't know what it is about Paxton, but somebody always has to give him some type of realization for him to make a decision. But he ends up going to the dance and wanting to be with Devi officially. Devi and Paxton walk in and Ben says to Elanor that it'll always be Paxton. And she states no, that she actually wanted to be with him initially, but they talked her out of it. And the whole freak out with Annessa was because she was so jealous. So I wonder what Ben is going to do with that information in season 3. Fabiola ends up being her old self again, telling Eve that she can't be who she wants. And Eve makes it clear that she doesn't want Fabiola to be anybody but herself. And they tell each other that they love each other. It's really beautiful. Side note, Kamala ends up ditching her almost fiance right before he proposes because she's just not ready and doesn't feel like he's the right person for her. But she ends up going to hang out with Mr. K at a high school dance. So it's obvious there's a lot of feelings there for her. And that's season 2 in a nutshell. We're starting to see way more growth in Devi. At the end of season 1, her friends basically just forgave her because she had another emergency. But in this one, she really had to fight for Annessa to forgive her and put effort behind her friendships. She also let Ben and Annessa be happy when she realized that that's what he wanted. And she was ready to walk away from Paxton, which is a huge thing for her. We're really starting to see some self-love from Devi. Now let's see how she keeps it up in season 3. Season 3 starts off with a very happy Devi because she is finally in a monogamous relationship publicly with one person, and it's Paxton, the guy she never dreamt she could have. But unlike in season 1 when she was ready to give away her virginity, she's not ready now. She overhears Shira and her friends saying Paxton could only be with her if she was giving away the goods. This gets to her and she tells her therapist. Dr. Ryan tells her not to let other people define who she is and to fully ignore them. Devi can't do that and she almost goes all the way with Paxton, but he can tell that she's not into it and he stops and he tells her he's okay with the pace they're going. Devi goes to tell the girls they're wrong about her and Paxton and they can't even remember the conversation. That's when Devi realizes that if she's not important to someone, then she shouldn't care what they think. Just when Devi gets to this realization, she receives a DM from an anonymous person saying Paxton isn't who she thinks he is. Paxton tells Devi to ignore the DM and says that he gets DMs from tons of people who says he shouldn't be with her, and she tries to ignore it but she can't. She figures out it's a girl named Haley who Paxton was friends with and ended up hooking up with, then ghosting her. Devi tells Paxton he has to apologize to her or they can't be together. At first, Paxton says no, but then of course something happens with his sister who got into an argument with a girl at school, and his parents gave her a speech about what kind of person she should be. Man, if it's one thing Paxton can't do, it's get to realizations on his own. So after being inspired after what his parents said, Paxton goes to apologize to Haley, which leads to a lot of girls lining up for an apology as well. So he ends up apologizing pretty much to every girl in school. Devi is happy about this until Paxton befriends Haley again. They get way too close and Devi becomes insecure in their relationship, saying Haley and Paxton make more sense together than they ever will. Paxton rightfully gets fed up and tells Devi he can't be with her until she likes herself. This is definitely a deep realization for Paxton to get to on his own. It's really good that he can figure out there's nothing that he's doing wrong in the relationship. He's pretty much stepped up in every way that she's asked, and now it's Devi's own insecurities that are working against her. I definitely think this is a growth moment for Paxton. So we see in a montage that some time has gone by and we get a more mature Devi who has accepted their breakup. I honestly really wish we would have seen some of this growth on screen. It would have been more impactful to the viewer, but nonetheless, I'm happy she's had some growth. So we flash forward to the first major party of the year, and it's Trent's birthday. Quick update, there's a lot of shuffling around with relationships this season. Trent and Elanor became a couple last season at the dance solely because he thought she was brilliant in a play. Ben and Annessa broke up because she felt like he was still hung up over Devi, and she also felt like he treated her poorly, which he kinda did. He was pretty condescending and douchey towards her for basically not being as smart as he is, so they called it quits. She also randomly kissed Fabiola in a bathroom. Fabiola's girlfriend moved to Japan and the long distance was just too much for them. And I may as well throw one last relationship in there with Manish and Kamala, aka Mr.K. They officially became a thing too, but their grandmother doesn't approve of him. She thinks he's not involved enough in their culture and he doesn't share the values she holds important. So when an Indian holiday comes up, the name of which I don't want to butcher, Kamala takes this as an opportunity to show that Manish takes their heritage seriously by inviting him. Devi tells Trent that she can't go to his party because of this Indian holiday, but Paxton doesn't buy it. He thinks she isn't going because he has a new girlfriend. Devi wants to desperately prove him wrong, and she tries to sneak out to go to the party, but she gets caught. Luckily for her, Nalini has a new friend, Raya, who has a son who she claims doesn't really have friends. So Nalini says Devi can go, but only if she takes her son. Devi is bummed that she has to take an assumed loser to the party, so she tells people it's her cousin. But when Nirdish, or Des for short, shows up and is one of the hottest guys she's ever seen, she quickly changes her story. Des gets mad that she stereotyped him initially and wants to leave, but then Devi sees Paxton with his new girlfriend and is upset, so he comforts her and says they can make Paxton jealous. Devi is so smitten with him that she doesn't even look to see if Paxton is looking. They have a great night and he says he's gonna text her, but he never does. Meanwhile, Fab is trying to teach Ben a lesson about being a know-it-all by challenging him to a drinking game of academics. She gets through to him and he apologizes, and he tells her that Devi broke his heart. which gives us even more of a glimpse that he's not over her. The event at Devi's house was a disaster as Manish pushed one of the aunties down accidentally and ruined the shrine they had up. It's looking like Patty is never going to accept him, which prompts Kamala to move out so she can live the life she wants. This is huge for Kamala as she's a character that normally people pleases. While Devi is trying to figure out why Des hasn't texted her, her friends say maybe it's because she hasn't kissed or flirted with anyone in a while. So at the drama club's charity coffee house, which can I say this school has the most random things going on. I would have loved to have this in my school. Anyways, she decides she's gonna kiss someone there, which her only option ends up being a geeky guy who is a lot less geeky when he starts performing with a guitar. Paxton is at this event too. He's there to add an extra layer to his college applications since it's his senior year. By the way, I totally thought Paxton was in the same grade as them, and I can't be the only one to feel like they changed this at the last minute. But anyways, instead of doing real charity work, he helps Fabiola make the first move with Annessa, who she has yet to talk to about their random kiss. Fab is ready, but Annessa beats her to it and asks if she wants to be her girlfriend. Devi has a moment with Paxton, who apologizes that he assumed she would care that he had a new girlfriend, and that he could tell that she's moved on. It's a cute and flirty moment to cement their new friendship. Same goes for her and Ben. They had a little bet of who could kiss the most people, and Devi was slightly jealous to know that he actually kissed someone too. But the new mature Devi just let these two interactions be just friendly and nothing more. Even though she initially was waiting on a guy to text her, I have to say this is impressive. She didn't text him, she went and lived her life, and she didn't worry about what those little moments with the two most important guys in her life meant. Way to go, Devi. In a Ben-centered episode, we get to see Ben pushing himself insanely hard, so much so that the school tells him to drop 2 classes. Ben doesn't listen to his body, and the stress caused him to end up in the hospital. Come to find out, he's been skipping meals and had an awful diet when he did eat, and it backs him up so bad that it caused Paxton to have to carry him to the car and take him to the hospital. At this point, Paxton should just really find a job as a first responder, the way that he's just randomly there when people need assistance. Paxton and Ben bond and they help each other out. Paxton has an essay to do for college, which Ben helps him with, and Paxton tells Ben if he's doing all of this to prove something to his dad, he should say screw him if he's not happy with all the work he's put in this far. It's beautiful to see this unlikely friendship that definitely wouldn't have happened 2 seasons ago. But with Ben being less douchey, and honestly the same with Paxton too, they were a lot more mature and have this cute little friendship brewing. Ben's dad comes home early from his work and tells him he's proud of him, and they have a really cute moment. For a show that's rooted in comedy, they surely get me to tear up a lot. Part of Ben's stress was seeing Devi with Des, who showed up for dinner with his mom and reconnected with Devi. He tells her he was hesitant to text her because she was just crying over Paxton. He's saying that like there isn't a way for him to convey that through text, but whatever. Devi gives him a chance and they start dating. But he's an academic like her, and when their schools go head to head for a debate, Devi feels like she needs to one-up him, and she tries to cheat to win the debate. Mr. K catches her and switches their topic last minute, but they end up winning on their own accord. He still takes it upon himself to take her home to her family to be punished. Patty finally sees that Manish can be responsible and approves of his relationship with Kamala. Devi wants to heat things up in her relationship with Des, so she has a plan to get both of their unsuspecting moms out of the house, who by the way have no idea that they're dating. She disguises the night as a game night. When Des's friends want alcohol and she doesn't have it, Elanor calls Trent for backup and he brings Paxton over, which is only a little awkward until Des's friend, who by the way is played by Reese Witherspoon's son, and I'm really mad at myself because I didn't initially catch that. Google totally had to tell me. Anyways, he ends up going through some of Devi's stuff because he's on the phone upset at his parents or something, and he's in the garage, picks up a racket and ends up banging it on some stuff, which is a huge no-no. Who walks into anyone's house and does that? It's definitely giving a spoiled rich kid to me. Devi gets upset and Paxton runs upstairs to comfort her. Des sees them in what he thinks is a compromising position and he decides to leave. Devi assured him that nothing happened and they start to hook up. Raya then walks in on them. The jig is up and both the moms know, but surprisingly to everyone, Devi's mom allows them to date. But you can tell from Raya's face that she isn't happy about it, but she acts like it's okay. Devi has a recital and Raya and Des come along with her mom to support her. But since it's the first recital since her dad's death, she sees her father in the audience and has a breakdown in the bathroom. Raya comes to comfort her and tells her it's okay. But it's really not to her because after that, she tells Des that Devi has too many issues and he needs to end it with her. Ben overhears this and tells Devi. Devi doesn't believe him and lashes out, saying he wants people to be miserable like he is. But when Des starts blowing her off, she starts to believe it. Fabiola hit it off with one of his friends, and since she follows them, she sees Des is at a coffee shop and not at a college outing like he claimed to be. Devi goes and pours coffee on him for being too much of a coward to break up with her. His mom sees this and they go back to her house and she acts like this is the reason why she doesn't want Des to be with Devi. But her lies are uncovered and Nelani puts her in her place, telling her that her daughter has been through something horrible and it would break someone as fragile as her. Nelani has noticed that Raya was always trying to give her unwanted tips on things and even made comments about appreciating that her son is quote-unquote easy compared to Devi's antics. So yeah, she definitely had that one coming. Devi gets upset and she feels like no one's ever gonna love her because she's too much. Nelani comforts Devi and tells her that she's never too much and always enough. And one day she will find someone who loves her as she is. This self-love moment is so touching. I love the layers they gave Devi's mom throughout the seasons because normally with foreign parents, they just make them super strict. But with Nelani, you see the reasoning behind everything she does and they don't make her a one-dimensional parent. So right after her breakup with Des, Elanor tells Devi that her and Trent hooked up and she tells her that she doesn't have to talk about it if she doesn't want to hear it since Devi is going through a breakup. But Devi actually puts her friend's news first and says that she's very happy for her. Devi also has to decide on whether or not she's going to a gifted school next fall, which would remove her from her current school her entire senior year. She says she doesn't want to go and she needs to stay because her and Fab have to lose their virginity still. Fab lets her know that she lost it to Des's friend Addison. I forgot to mention that Annessa and Fab decided to just be friends because their breakup was kind of uneventful. But Fab is much happier and actually feels a spark with Addison, so yay them. Now, Devi is officially the only virgin in their group, but she's not at all jealous about it. This is a long way from season 1 Devi, who decided to deceive her friends about hooking up with Paxton. Devi also apologizes to Ben, who accepts pretty easily. He's found peace in his new hobby of drawing and isn't as tightly wound up. Devi says how she was just embarrassed and that she was afraid that she's gonna die a virgin. So Ben makes a joke that if she's still a virgin on her deathbed, he will have sex with her. He gives her a piece of paper that says 1 free Boink on it. They laugh and Paxton comes over and tells them both that he got into Arizona State. So all of the studying that Paxton did seems to have paid off. Paxton did a lot of growing this season. He ended up ending his relationship with Phoebe because he realized that she had no goals and he had a lot. And Paxton actually ends up adding Devi to his graduation speech, but she feels nothing but friendship between them. But when Ben hears that she decided to go to the fancy school, he tells her he doesn't want her to go, and boom, she gets that not so friendly feeling. Even though Devi initially makes the decision to go to the school, she tells her mom that she wants one more year with her because time isn't always on their side given what happened to her dad. And man, did the waterworks come for me during this scene. The growth and the relationship with her mom for me is better than any love triangle they've thrown at us. I'm really hoping this storyline helps mothers and daughters that have similar rocky relationships. They did such a beautiful job with their relationship. They didn't give us a sitcom ending. They gave us true conflict and resolution along with growth that was completely believable. After that, Devi just can't shake the feeling that she wants one more thing to go right, so she goes to Ben's house and gives him the one free Boink coupon. And they end the season with us seeing her enter his room. Now, many people have had their interpretations on this, some thinking it's just a hookup, but for me, I definitely think she picked Ben for a reason. Like Elanor said at the end of season 2, initially she wanted to pick him, but she picked Paxton for surface level reasons. And even though everyone has had their growth in the last 2 seasons, what she had with Ben to me was always the strongest. They just both had to grow up to be able to have it. I think we will see them dating in the 4th and final season, but whether or not they make the decision to have them end up together is something that is up in the air. They could pull the same thing that the TV show Awkward did and have her choose herself. In all, the writing in this show is brilliant. It makes you laugh and cry, and the evolution from Crazy Devi to having a well-rounded Devi is completely believable. They had her make progress and also regress a lot, which is something that happens in real life. And even though I'm sad the next season is the last season, I'm happy they're not going to run this series into the ground. Now, if you've made it this far, I absolutely stan you. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe. I may keep trying my hand at these long videos if you guys like it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.